we're going from the one extreme to the other extreme. Now that the junior miners have left the stage, now we're going to get a presentation from Sasol, a junior company, about their collaboration with Anglo American, another junior company. So we could not have gone from more to the other extreme. Thank you very much. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's your timer. You don't have a lot of time, sorry.
Jeez.
I know.
Abusive, eh? That was the theme I picked up today. So one of the benefits I had in sitting at the back there and just listening is that you kind of get a feel for the temperature in the room. So now I know Bernard is abusive, but I also found out that the mining sector is experiencing a lot of challenges. I heard carbon tax, I heard rising input costs, sustainability challenges, and as a solutionist, I sit there and I think, but what are those decarbonization pathways, right? How do we balance that energy trilemma? There's energy security that's important, there's affordability issues coming out, and then the sustainability goals. So what I'm going to talk about today is actually one of those pathways, and that talks to biofuels and that local opportunity. So as Bernard said, my name is Ken Sarman. I lead the Sustainable Feedstocks and Biofuels team in Sasol. And I'm going to talk about this opportunity at a South African level. I'm going to talk about Sasol's role in unlocking an opportunity like this. Hopefully it'll talk to how that can benefit you as the mining industry. And then finally go through the partnership that was formed at the Mining Indaba earlier this year around, with Sasol, Anglo American, and Z.B.S. So going back to the slide that I have on screen, I think that's really the burning platform, right? This is some of the work that was done by NBI, and what it shows is there are significant emissions from the mining and transport sectors. So I've just bundled those two areas that an option like biofuels could solve, which is a major contributor to the emissions profile at a country level, right? So before I go too far, I mean, what is a biofuel? There's many types of biofuels. There's many types or pathways to get to it, which is shown here on the screen. It's a little bit of a busy one, but the one that I want to point out, which is relevant to the audience here today, is an option that we've been working with called renewable diesel. Very big difference between renewable diesel and biodiesel. Renewable diesel is a drop-in option. It's chemically the same as fossil diesel that you currently use today, but it does have up to 90% GHG reduction, right? You can start with many types of feedstocks. Generally speaking, you want to go down the route of a second generation, so it's a feedstock that does not compete with food, for example. And I'll come to how the processing facilities that we have that could go down that route. But to point out more than just the renewable diesel, I think there are other options, right? So biomethane, also a drop-in option. Talking to the gas cliff that was mentioned earlier on, this is something that is compatible with the existing pipelines. It could become a dual-firing fuel for some of your vehicles. And then there's also, ethanol, right, that we can also produce locally that can be blended into the petrol pool at the back end. All right, so I think the key issue, though, with unlocking those biofuels, let's hone into the renewable diesel option I mentioned, is feedstock, right? So in the biofuels game, they call it feedstock is king. And I think that's the key limiter here, right? So if you think about other feedstocks that can go into biofuels, used cooking oil is one of them. There was an interesting topic about localization. So used cooking oil in this country, all of it collected, exported to Europe, and it's turned into a biofuel there, right? Interestingly, you pay an import duty to bring the stuff into the country, but it leaves the country for free. So, regulatory-wise as well, something needs to change there. But, so UCO, or used cooking oil, is limited in its nature because it's not scalable, because there's small volumes available inside the country, right? So how do you unlock large amounts of volumes? And I think this is where it becomes quite interesting, because as South Africa, we got quite an interesting advantage. It comes down to land, right? So, in fact, this land advantage is your advantage. Many of the mining companies in this room today have what they classify as a liability, I classify as an opportunity, degraded land or mine-impacted land, right? So, and how do you use that and how do you operationalize that is that you could look at the generation of feedstocks on that land. So there's multiple benefits to that, of course. You create a whole new agricultural sector, and that's because you're not competing with food, right? So it's on new land, so it's new jobs. You can see some of the numbers on the screen there, some work that was done by WWF in the last 12 months. One of the key questions I had when we started this journey at Sasol is, how much of land is there? Is this opportunity really benefit? In fact, I think two people in the corridors asked me the same thing. And the answer is that we've done our own checks and worked this out. It's roughly 3 million hectares of land that we have available. Now, not all of that land has resources, and the resources I'm talking about is the resources you need for farming, so water, infrastructure. So not all of it is directly an opportunity, but a large amount of it is. And that kind of just maps out for you where that land is. A lot of that area up there in close to our refinery, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, in that region, is owned by mining houses. So, under that classification is probably some of the land that you owned directly. So when we look at this opportunity happening in other areas, in Asia, for example, there's a lot of this happening already. A lot of international companies are recognizing Africa as a whole as an opportunity for this. I mean, you've heard concepts of Africa being the breadbasket, lots of excess land, and resources along with it. And what we're seeing is that large oil and gas companies entering Kenya, Mozambique, DRC, to name a few, to operationalize this concept, right? They come in and they start to, in effect, grow out these energy crops. The unfortunate part is a lot of that oil, as a feedstock, leaves the country, it doesn't beneficiate, right? So herein the opportunity for Sasol, right? So how do we then play a role is then making our assets available to operationalize this. So Sasol's, the technology we employ, the assets that we have that competitive advantage of being phased. So while our base energy demand or feedstock is 90% coal, 10% gas, we can start to blend in biomass with the coal, for example. We can start to bring in biomethane with the gas. In our refinery, we can start to bring in a biolipid feedstock with the crude oil. So, and that's the opportunity we have, so that we could start to co-process in our assets to produce sustainable fuels, right? So, so we make that available to the local industry as a whole. And part of this is us in this phase actually showing that our assets are feedstock ready for, sustainable feedstocks. In the last few weeks, we've just completed commercial runs now in our inland refinery in Natref. We've brought in substantial amounts of used cooking oil and produced the first batches of renewable diesel, so that we can show that that entire supply chain is operational. Technically, the asset can do this with no negative impacts. And that's kind of just, making sure that the systems are ready, right? So very soon you'll start to see, and in fact in the mining endeavor, we launched that renewable diesel as a new product offering. And this is now following that up with the commercial demonstrations of that. Another interesting concept I heard of today, and I think it's testament to how we've kind of structured also our strategy as Sasol, right? So we recently re-announced our strategy at the Capital Market Day about a month ago. And one of the key themes that we have introduced is, walking in lockstep with customers. Because the energy transition, the key thing that I've taken away is timing. So you have to time it right. Otherwise, I think someone in the audience or one of the other panelists spoke about Sasol's failed hydrogen project. So we don't want to do that kind of thing again, right? So we want to make sure that we move as fast as our customer. So we get the assets ready, but we can't produce the fuel if no one is going to offtake it. And what better way to do that than actually bringing in your partners into the project itself. And that's what we did at Mining in Durban. And I think the whole point of today was for me to talk about this, but I had to use some of that time to showcase the company. So, so that's what we did. I think there's this collaboration between the three companies here on the screen is then saying, how do we create a low-cost feedstock utilizing the land opportunity that those three companies have, and some of you in the room have, to create a low-cost feedstock, utilizing Sasol's assets to produce a local biofuel that can provide a decarbonization lever for the mining industry. That's in effect what we are doing. So if I just reflect on those three areas, and you can see that they talk to feedstock production, processing, and logistics, and then the last one is on the offtake side of things. The key thing here, again, not to overemphasize, is how do we now create this feedstock opportunity and operationalize it? So there are several things that we are doing from that perspective, right? And this is in a joint effort between the Anglo American group and Z.B.S. And it starts off by understanding what are those feedstock options, what are the crop options. Many things to think of there. You want something that's high yielding. You want something that does not compete with food, something that does grow on mined land that's rehabilitated with high saline water, for example. So we're going through quite a rigorous process to understand those options, learning from what's happening in other parts of the world, trialing them locally. We've got 2 trials ongoing, one with Solaris, which is a tobacco-based crop, another one with moringa. That's, I guess you know what moringa is. And then the other crops that we have identified that we will probably move into a trialing phase if that does make any sense. The other important thing here is to actually show that this is truly sustainable. We talk about certification around this. There are certification bodies that we would need to comply with. So from an Anglo perspective, that's quite clear. How would they be able to claim the credit associated with this feedstock? So earlier on I mentioned renewable diesel potentially up to 90% GHG reduction. How do I make that credible claim is on Anglo's mind, and we have to be able to show this, and the certification process is what we would follow there, right? So the process itself has to be sustainable and certifiable. The technical specification also very important. Expensive equipment that's being used. This has to comply with your technical spec. Some of it's mentioned on the screen. Sasol is known for this, very advanced fuel labs that can test for this and guarantee the technical spec associated with that. And then, of course, making sure that the logistics and all of it come together in a good way. So and then the last part is quite easy, right? So once we're able to comply in terms of the technical and sustainability certification, we're able to show the scalability of this type of an option, then this would be a viable opportunity then for our customers. In this case, it's the Anglo Group and Z.B.S. And it talks to working in lockstep, right? So at any point, if any of the parties now decide this is not really the decarbonization pathway I want to follow, I'd rather electrify all the mines, then that's what you do. But at least then it prevents anyone in that relationship from investing in infrastructure without the option of it going forward. So that's kind of the idea of what we're doing here. I think there was a question that was posed as I was invited to speak around, is this something very exclusive for these parties on the screen? The answer is no. Sasol is looking at making these opportunities available to the South African or even the sub-Saharan area. Our refinery is quite large. We've got other facilities that can also do this type of co-processing and produce these products. We see our role as assisting customers in the region to decarbonization. So it's not an exclusive opportunity that we're pursuing with them. But we've decided to come together because we had a like-minded vision. But it is definitely open for any other mining house. So if you do feel that you want to reach out and ask how to contribute or to participate, then please do talk to me. Cool. 30 seconds to spare.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's, do you mind sitting down and we'll do a few questions here. I'm confused on a different level now. So is this going to be Anglo, Sasol, and Z.B.S planting the feedstock on their previously mined areas? Is that your concept?
I think
are you ultimately getting to and real farmers do the farming, or is this mining
yeah,
companies
there's
getting
no
into
ambition of any of these companies to become farmers. I think I should have said that outright. So the idea is that there would be other partners that would need to operationalize that ecosystem. We're really good at refining and making products, so we're just going to stick to that.
So you're going to buy the feedstock
We're
from
going to buy the
farmers?
feedstock. Yeah. So ultimately, the idea is to use the land advantage and to bring in someone who can do the farming for you. So that most likely you'll include a farming partner, to come in and do that efficiently.
And with this, I mean, this is as ignorant as it sounds. Is this a crop that would be dry land farming? In other words, the only water you will use is natural rainwater, because in a water-scarce country, you mentioned water as a critical consideration.
Yeah, we're looking at both. We're looking at irrigated and non-irrigated options. So there are crops that we could consider for non-irrigated. The thing, though, is that if you can find irrigated options, it would be really good. So we've been speaking to some of the mining houses that have issues with decanting water, and again, it's a bit of a liability. And we look at it another way and we say, well, that's actually, we need that water. So if you don't need to clean it up to potable water quality. We only need it to get to this point, and then we can use it as an input into farming.
But not as extreme as acid mine drainage water, even that water?
Well, part of the crop options we're looking at is crops that are quite hardy to high salt. So we want to actually process that minimally and be able to use it. I'm actually a chemical engineer by background, but now I've affectionately started being called Farmer Ken at work. So there's an interesting term I learned called phytoremediation, which talks to the ability of a plant to actually extract and clean up the soil around it and lock in the nasty stuff into the structure of it. So that's so indirectly answering your question, you could potentially use fairly contaminated water, or let's say to somewhat contaminated water, and use the process of that farming to even consume it, but also clean up as well.
With the risk of I'm then shipping my poisoned water in a feedstock to your plant and you pump it into the air, do you?
At Sasol, we're also very good at checking water quality. So we'd probably close the taps from your facility.
Can I'm really trying to comprehend. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a question here about how many tons will it take to replace your tons, but that's not your plan. Your plan's not to stop using coal. This is an additional. But give us a sense of how many hectares will give you a ton. I mean, just scale this for us into language we could understand.
Yeah.
So thousands of hectares needs to be planted to get you some tons, to get you some liters. Can you talk us through that equation at sort of high level?
Yeah, before I do that, I actually want to switch it around and ask you a question. Do you know how much of land is used to grow soy in this country, for example?
I've got no idea,
1 million hectares.
So this is 3 times the soya.
It's not even, right? So 1 million hectares of land currently in South Africa is used to grow soy. What I'm trying to say is that South Africa really knows how to farm, right? And we're doing large-scale farming activities in this country already.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think we were looking at each crop has a different yield. So we're in the process of looking at what would be the optimal plant to give you the highest yield, and it's also very dependent on the geographic location, climatic zones, and all sorts of things. But if we target, I'll give it to you in a range. If we target about 100 million liters of biofuels through our NATREF facility, which is what we're looking at, you would need something between 100 and 200,000 hectares of land, depending on what crops you look at.
It's not a scary number at all in the context
it's not a scary number at all.
South African farming,
relative now to the million I've just given you. So, and then if you look at the land availability, which now is not competing with food up to 3 million hectares, then it kind of puts into perspective that there is potentially an opportunity here that's a little bit untapped.
But Farmer Ken, the part I don't like, is, I mean, when we put together a conference like this, we sit and say, which of the 7 ministers do we invite? Because, you know, in our space, there's this minister. Now you've just added that other dude as well, that DA dude. Now we have to invite the Minister of Flippin' Farming to our conferences. I'm not sure about that one.
And by the way, he's a big supporter.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is. Yeah, that's Steer Nation. Now we need to invite Tim Paula for our next day. So there is some cynicism around biofuels. I've had previous false starts, I think even in this country.
Yeah.
In countries where it is used extensively, it's under attack from time to time because it competes with food.
With food, yes.
Yes. So what's different this time?
I think there's 2 questions there. So the one is, on the false starts, I would agree, it's like hydrogen, right? So it's, you know, everyone was drunk with the concept for a long time and quickly realizing the technology curves are not getting you anywhere. Biofuels, very mature. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're learning a lot from what's happened already, what's happening already, I should say. Asia, North America, Europe. So they're in a different regulatory regime, and that could be a stumbling block for us here. But if you look at that partnership slide that I just put forward, you didn't see government in there, and that's because we're trying to make an opportunity work without a subsidy. That's a key thing.
You don't need a subsidy.
It would be very nice to have. So please do invite that. Please do invite. But I think the idea is to see how far we can get without that. If we do have it, it would be really nice to have. So I think that's the first part. To answer the question of not falling into that trap with a false start again, and that's the idea why we're bringing in the off-taker into the equation now, right? So at any point, the off-taker can actually walk away from this. And we do this in a way in which we don't sterilize any capital. We don't put down something too early, but acknowledging that it seems like this could be something imminent.
You're obviously committing your career to this. So you think this is more than just a moonshot, long shot, crazy idea?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, it's, you know, the more we dig into the space, the more you realize that the opportunity is, we would like this opportunity to play out locally, right? But in reality, you can actually just tap into an external market that's already there, right? So take renewable diesel as that example I was making. If you go to Europe now, you will find it on the pump.
Yeah.
It's there. There's a price, there's a market, and so we could just export this as a product like we export chemicals. Now, the unfortunate part of that is then we're benefiting, you know, again, another country, but maybe that's how it may start. Yeah.
Ladies, gentlemen, I have learned about something I knew nothing about, a little bit. Ken? You'll have to come back next year to show us the progress. But thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your input. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Yes. You've got a nice iPad. Take it.